Welcome to the Only Male Cruz Show, the We On Your Head podcast. Discussing topics that make you say, how and where can we improve as a society? From a Black American's perspective. Copyright disclaimer regarding fair use is in full effect. The views and opinions expressed in this show, you guessed it, they're all mine. Catch this live, be ready to speak. This is a call-in show. Be sure to hit the like button, share, subscribe, replay gang, leave a comment. You know I want to hear from you. Let's go to work. All right, good morning. Welcome to the Only Male Cruz Show, the We On Your Head podcast. I know for a lot of you, it's the first time like, oh, Mel, you're on camera. Yeah, I'm on camera because I got some intellectual people that are going to be joining me on this panel this morning. And anyway, we had a couple technical issues where this was really supposed to be pre-recorded, but listen, clearly this is supposed to be live. So grab some coffee. Replay gang, leave a comment. I want to hear from you. We're going to get right into it. We're talking about, yet again, Dr. Claud Anderson, Powernomics. And we've been on chapter 2. We're actually about to close chapter 2 out, but we're going to get into something that is just so important, which is vertical integration. Okay, and Dr. Claud Anderson has put some meat on the table regarding that. So before we get all the way into that, I want to bring in Mr. Yusuf Colburn, as you were, and Ben B. Okay, and these two gentlemen are so intellectual. You guys are going to be thanking me for thinking of them to have them come to the show. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mel, for the compliment, and good morning.
Oh, yes, you're so welcome.
I'm not being modest. I wouldn't exactly call myself an intellectual. I'm just a regular person, probably in the mid-range of, 50th percentile of intellect.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I agree.
With concerns about our people and where we're headed.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. All it does is taking a little bit of reading. That's all to become an intellect. So
yeah,
spend the time reading, and you'll be able to be distinguished in that honor.
Awesome. And where I'm from, for both you guys, yeah, that's modesty. Listen, these guys are on point. Okay. So anyway, with that being said, I wanted to do a quick recap because we've talked about ethno-aggregation, and to me that is such a fascinating topic from Dr. Claud Anderson. I love how he put it together, and I want to just catch up anybody that's seen the show, the previous episodes, or it's just new. I want to make sure that we can all be on the same page. So I want to do just a quick overview of what ethno-aggregation is. So ethno-aggregation is best defined as the voluntary concentration of individuals and their resources around their ethnic or language commonalities for the purpose of improving their economic and political competitiveness. The term ethno-aggregation may be new, but the concept is not. It is a behavior pattern used every day by religious, gender, ethnic, and Spanish-speaking groups. The culture of these groups emphasizes that members rally around common characteristics or attributes, which that's where the ethno comes from, in order to pool their collective resources, aggregation, and compete with non-group members. And do you guys agree with that definition? For starters, and secondly, I'll just say I agree with that definition, and that is sorely missing from our Black American community.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We do aggregate in some major cities, but when we're talking about other ethnicities in the United States, I think they have been here for a short amount of time, and they do it based off of necessity. There's a really great documentary called "The Search for General Sal," and it kind of outlines how the Chinese American and the proliferation of American Chinese restaurants expanded based off of them focusing on their ethnicity as well as yeah. So I definitely think it. And I think we can do a better job and be more intentional about aggregating together.
Hmm. Totally. Ben, I didn't know if you had a comment that you wanted to throw in on there, um, and feel free to jump in, everyone.
Oh, well, I would say that as Dr. Anderson did state in this book, his observations were that other ethnic groups that the greater U.S. Government tried to lump us into the same pot with, they have traditionally been more focused on ethno aggregating, and
Hmm.
they use their ethnic identity as a binder to keep them together, and they've used their sense of identity to make sure that they stay together, even though this government have tried to focus on integration and assimilation. Those groups, unlike our group, has refused to assimilate, and because of that, they've even though they've been here for less, this in certain cases less than 1 or 2 generations, they're outpacing us because while we're pursuing integration and assimilation, and more specifically, as Claude Anderson defines it, as horizontal assimilation, those other groups have refused to do that, and they're more their approach is more rational, and they're focusing on uh, ethno aggregation and vertical integration, which they from the beginning saw would improve their people economically and socially. And I guess if not contradiction, it at the opposite end, we've bought what the U.S. government has sold us as far as believing that integration would improve our position in this country, and so we've refused to focus on ethno aggregation as Dr. Anderson proposes. And after that 60-year experiment, we can see how it's hurt us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what, you just certified for me, Ben, why it was an absolute imperative that both you and Yusuf be here today. Um, let me still in this, because I agree with you. That horizontal, we've believed that this horizontal piece was to our advantage, and when we've gone out as a community and gotten a little something here, maybe a good job, maybe got a good union position, and our parents, retired and this and that, whatever, homes, properties, whatever, it made it seem like, hey, this horizontal really works. Never giving consideration to the vertical piece of it. Let me move in here on page 48, because it's just a small recap. Um, um, and Dr. Claude Anderson is saying our first step to group empowerment is to develop communities in which to practice ethno aggregation. Blacks are the only group in America that do not have communities. We have residential neighborhoods. Decades of integration caused an exodus of middle and upper middle class professional blacks, the backbone of our community, into the white suburbs, thus weakening the cohesiveness of earlier black neighborhoods and making it difficult physically and psychologically to identify and amass our group resources. We are still stymied under racial segregation. And so he goes on further. He states regrouping blacks through ethno aggregation is necessary to counter the effects of individualism, which teaches blacks to oppose each other rather than pool resources and cooperate with one another. Ethno aggregation would give blacks a political and economic base. And I want to ask both of you gentlemen, if we were to, because we all talk about the black state migration. Um, if we do, you think that that would be one of the problems as far as our ability to learn how to cooperate with each other, either once we, this majority state, black majority state, is prepared, or while we're in the process of trying to make that happen, is that going to be an issue with our ability to cooperate to accomplish or achieve the goal? And I hope my question makes sense to you guys.
Yeah. So later in the chapter towards the end,
Mhm.
Dr. Claude Anderson talks about four key elements, and I know that we're going to get to them, but to answer that question, I'll
Mhm.
start with those two. So the first is that, and he makes sure that we do it in a sequential order. So the first is we have to develop empowerment culture. So earlier in the book, he talks about undesirable behaviors
Mhm.
that we have to kind of make sure that everybody in the community knows that these are things that aren't going to advance our culture. And then the second one, he said that we need to focus on. I'm drawing a blank right now. The
Sure.
second one was we have to create a group vision. That's what it was. A group vision, and making sure that not just allowing other, whether that be the Democrats, Republicans, create this agenda for us. And an agenda, when you have a meeting, then the agenda is for the people that are in your meeting, not for other people. So when we create this vision, it really needs to outline what are our expectations, not only for ourselves, how we expect for our future, not only for our kids, but how do we, when we're, going on the path of, vertically integration, what does that look like? Oftentimes I hear about, Black people, supporting other and, patroning other, businesses from other communities. And, earlier in the chapter or his first book, he laid out, black labor, white wealth, and all wealth is created based off of labor. So we need to be able to be intentional about who actually we are working for,
Mhm.
because every time you're working for another person, a culture, you're actually building wealth for them. So we really need to be focused in on not only where and how we're allocating our wealth, in the essence of our labor, and really making sure, and also people that are able to, start their own businesses, as well as hire, Black folks, so we can kind of insulate our power, and that goes more into the vertical integration. So I don't think it's a challenge. I just think that we all need to be able to communicate as a community, and I think you know we actually do a great job. I was reading MLK's biography. He was talking about where do we go from here, and he
Yes.
kind of outlined four structured forces. And what's unique about the Black culture is that when we're talking about Black Americans, honestly, if you're really thinking from an ethnicity standpoint, we might actually be the largest ethnicity in the United States. When you're talking about European Americans, German Americans, they create this white race to actually combine their numbers so
Yeah.
they appear to look like they're larger.
Mhm.
And then when we're talking about Black people, as far as our family wealth, they're basing it, if you're aggregating all of our families together, our spending power from an ethnicity standpoint is, it rivals,
Huge.
European Americans. So
Mhm.
um, I think the need for this race concept is for the assimilation of more so the white race, so they can work together.
Yes.
So I think we have all the tools and these necessary resources. It's really important that we actually do what Dr. Claude Anderson
Sure.
outlines, because we have everything. We
Right.
just have diluted our numbers by being so spread out throughout the
Sure.
country.
Yeah. I
Absolutely.
appreciate I appreciate your perspective, Youssef. You're correct. As far as our ethnicity, uh, I've had discussions on the numbers, and within the U.S., we are the second largest ethnic group. The Germanic Europeans are the first, and it is used as somewhat of a psyop it's psychological warfare against us to make us feel that we're less than we actually are. They use the same tactics with trying to combine the Latino and Hispanic populations into one, to make us believe that we're third now, where the Latino populations are from disparate countries, but they all lump them into one, even though these people don't have the same interest. And yes, you're right. It began with the European ethnicities, where they took the Germans, the Italians, the Portuguese, and lumped them all into one. But technically, the Germanic people are number one, and we're number two, and we should realize our power. And as far as the proposals made by Dr. Anderson, as you mentioned, I believe we do need to recapture control of our identity, and in order to establish an agenda of moving forward and how we're going to move forward, or what we should focus on as a people, that requires leadership. That requires some of us to step forward and like grab the reins to try to direct the people that are willing to listen or participate, to direct what steps we should be taking to economically and socially improve ourselves. So as some propose, we should have an overall code or standard, and that would guide us. I don't think that's adequate, because like inherently we all grow up in different households. Even though we do have a similar culture that holds us together, everyone has different ideas. So unless you establish a charter that everyone refer to, it would be near impossible for all of us to expect to organize on the same level and pursue the goals that we want to pursue.
True. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I think for the Black community, the Black community, the people in the community who are ever pressing towards our betterment as a group of people, as a race, some of us are stuck on this, the code is the leader, etc. And that's cute. And to some extent, it should be the leader. That code should, when no one's around, we should be abiding by the code. But in order to adjust to scenarios that present themselves in the middle of our everyday living, we have to have the ability and the opportunity to get together with someone who we are able to say, hey, look, here's a problem. Let's break it down. Now let's make some decisions.
That has real structure.
Right.
I would say I wanted to use that expression, the code, as a leader, but I kind of made an analogy to it.
Sure.
I would say when you delve deeper or investigate into that and you ask people, what is the code? Then if you speak to 1,000 people, you'll get 1,000 variations or ideas. So what people term a code is actually their own personal idea of how they handle or certain situations. So there is, even though Neely Fuller did write a book that addresses
the code that is currently referenced,
or on a societal level, things we may encounter as a people. Even if you look at certain standards he set, people don't abide by them, or they have no idea what they are. Or if they knew exactly what his proposals, they would disagree. So that's always an issue. There's a different idea based on who you are about how to proceed in life and how to address racism or issues affecting us on an economic, social, political level. So, like, if we're going to move forward, and I just wanted to address your original question about the Black majority state.
Sure.
If we're going to move forward, we do need leadership to step forward and set standards. We need central organization. I know people are afraid of that because they believe if we did act from a central in the form of having leaders who proposed goals for us, and if we had a central leadership that directed how our movement would move forward, they believe that government agencies would target those leaders, or our movement overall would be subverted, because I believe inherently we still don't trust or believe in ourselves or each other.
Yes.
But in order to get to the Black majority state, we have to take it in steps, and we have to build the movement on different levels in
Mm,
order to buttress our sense of community, our sense of belief in ourselves. We have to bring in the most qualified people to handle the tasks that need to be handled to get us into the areas where we can challenge the political authority, or we can begin to build businesses, or we can begin to network with each other and build industries. But as far as ethno aggregation, I believe the concept of a majority Black state is the highest form of ethno aggregation. That's the
Jesus.
highest form of expression of us forming a community, having a foundation, and helping that foundation lift up the community to the point where we can build industry, we can build foundations,
Right.
we can build infrastructure. And the people that are at the top of that tree, like, I know it's a Y model, but I also think of it as a tree where the roots sustain the trunk and branches up and branches out,
Right.
so we can begin to challenge others. People
Absolutely.
think of a tree as an analogy for the T model or the Y model.
Yeah.
I believe that it takes the base or foundation to sustain those who want to move forward, and as Dr. Anderson mentioned,
Mhm.
build the infrastructure that'll pull up others, and that would be indefinite. It's just not a
Right.
one-time thing. We want to create that system or that structure where first those at, I don't want to say the bottom, but at the base,
Sure.
continually provides political, economic, and cultural support
Right.
to the leadership, and
Sure.
the leadership instills or creates the infrastructure that continually pulls up those from the base.
Right.
So it becomes like a cycle that
Right.
perpetuates itself,
Mhm.
Right.
and
Uh,
and overall, it reinforces
mhm.
our
Now,
goals.
here's what I want you to do, Ben. I want you to hold on to all that, because you've actually begun to make this graphic come alive for me. Because what you just said, I didn't get all that last night when I was reading this. Okay. And what you just said, but I know Yusuf was getting ready to say something, and I want to read just the remaining piece that brings us right to that Model T mobility model, so that our listeners and viewers can grasp what you just said and what I'm sure you're going to add to. So, Yusuf, was there something else that you were getting ready to say? Um,
Um, I agree with a lot of Ben, what he said.
mhm,
I'm in a fraternity, historically Black fraternity, and oftentimes we hear concepts of, let's say, the Talented Tenth by Webby Du Bois, and honestly, I've read it, and I think there's when we're talking about leadership in the Black community. Oftentimes, people thinking about people have the wealth, have money and fame and such, but based off of W.E. Du Bois, his own writing, how he articulated and wrote down data on who at that time was the leaders in the community. They pretty much he focused on the educated, and at that time, 53% of all educated people were teachers.
right,
So I think oftentimes, like now, when we think about the talented tenth, it has kind of morphed its meaning. But at the time, the teachers were, 50% of the teachers in the north, they would actually come down to south to educate our communities, because majority of our Black folks at that time were in the south, and 90% of the Black people, teachers, would actually stay in the south, and educate. So when I think about like leaders and so on and so forth, you definitely have business leaders and such. But really, what we need to do, just even this book, being able to obtain information and be able to disseminate it, and actually, and one of the other things is like when we are thinking about building, a lot of like trades and other things like that, it's really important that we have people that are master teachers. So when I'm thinking like Black excellence, it actually it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you can be excellent at whatever your field. So um, I hold teachers and educators in the highest regard. I think they are the people that arm you with the resources for individuals that are leaders or entrepreneurs, to actually make sure that whatever direction or leadership that they're providing, they have the right, not only from an education standpoint, from being able to have the knowledge, but also have the character. I think that's a really important part about education as well. So I look for teachers, and, like Dr. Claud Anderson, to educate us, and then I think it's up to us to go out and find our niche or
Sure.
our group that kind of works to the same way, because
Right.
everybody has their own different style, or different mission in life, but it just makes it's really important. That's why we're connecting on this document, because it's gives us all a direction forward when we're when we move on to vertical integration, so we're all moving upwards and
Right.
not outwards anymore.
Right. And thank you for that. And also, when I was doing some research on HBCUs, I was really kind of astonished that so many of them had, when they first came into to being,
Hmm.
offered education as, it's scholarship. It's like, so many people were going to become teachers, and I just thought about, like, as coming out of slavery, so many individuals wanted to position themselves to ensure that their future was educated, and that they knew how to educate, and they knew how to disseminate this information. And yes, they did some other things. There were other programs, quote unquote, that were offered, but teaching really did seem to be a main, one of the first degrees that was offered for former slaves. Um, and Dr. Claude Anderson has also stated I think in the Black Labor White Wealth book, um, about us having leaders previously. He stated that every time we've had a leader, either they got taken out, or they were offered some better terms. Um, and so that's also been another reason why, as a group, as a race, as a people, we've not been able to successfully accomplish our goals, or really successfully compete with these other ethnicities that are here in our country. So I do like your concept, what you said about, you look to our teachers, because if these teachers all over are pretty much teaching the same message, and then the other pieces of our community are, operating on the same page, that actual leader, like, you heard what I said, do what I say, that piece of leadership won't necessarily be needed.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Like, there's a concept called servant leadership, and
mm,
that's
mm,
exactly what I look at. Teachers making sure you're figuring out what your community needs, and you're going
absolutely.
out and obtaining the knowledge, and then bringing back and enriching. And like I mentioned, the first key goal is empowerment of the culture. And I think education is the language of empowerment,
Mm,
and that will help others be able to create a collective vision, and then document that. To Ben's point, oftentimes people have their own different versions or realities. And I think if we do a better job in documenting, like, this book is a great documentation. We need updated, documentation on, what where we go from here.
Hmm. Absolutely. Let me read on page 51. Let me get into Dr. Claude Anderson's introduction of paradigm number 2, vertical integration, because that's going to bring us right over here to this power T mobility model. And you guys jump in whenever if I hit something that you're like, hey, wait a
Sure.
minute.
If I
Okay,
can interrupt
so
the one thing
yes,
to
sir,
follow up
absolutely.
or to respond, I think
Hmm.
there's one element to consider regarding teachers and professionals, intellectuals, everyone that participated in the uplifting of our society during segregation. There was a then versus now, and the people that were in the community during segregation, they had a collective identity. Like they weren't detached from the destiny of the people. And I would say, moving forward, those professionals, those teachers, those intellectuals, those technicians, because we're in every industry, we can do everything in this country that needs to be done. Those people can't separate themselves from the greater destiny of the collective. They have to believe and understand that they have a stake, a collective stake in our overall welfare. We extinguish together. And I think that's an important element that future leadership that pushes for ethno aggregation has to let them know. You can't be consider yourself alone. You can't say, this is me, I got mine, and that's them over there.
Right.
Because you know what? That doesn't
Yes.
make you, that doesn't put you at the top. What that
Right.
makes you is endangered species.
Mm.
Because
Yeah, I
after
mean,
all of the people that you neglected
Right.
mhm.
are extinct and you're alone, then they'll turn on you and you'll be
Right.
the last one.
Yeah,
Right.
They have to
I mean,
understand
that's a great point. Even
our destiny.
even I apologize,
Oh,
but
go ahead,
yeah,
Youssef.
even when people have their PhDs, I often hear like Dr. Claude Anderson, and others, like they speak on, because they have their PhD in, let's say, African American studies and so on. They have ability to do research, in a scholarly manner. Uh, but like, for I always hear, capitalism isn't going to work for Black people, and oftentimes people that are have PhDs, or Black people that have PhDs, they're speaking it from their angle, from a historical perspective. And I think having Black economics PhDs, and having people with different backgrounds and learning. So I don't think there is necessarily one person that can provide one solution. I think it's a collection of different vantage points of the Black interest, and that's kind of where we create a foundation to move forward. Even when folks do offer critiques, or maybe something that isn't I'll say academic uh, uh, opportunities that aren't really progressing our community, I think it's still beneficial. Just like any type of failure, it's just an opportunity to succeed, and you get closer to success. So you do need people to venture off in different directions, so we know not to go there. So that's how I look at it. Even in several failures academically, I think we have a better scope and a more narrow pathway forward, because of people's, whether that be people talk about feminism and things like that. If we didn't have those type of, some of the negative aspects of those aspects, I don't think we would have been able to create the level of balance that we need to move forward.
Yes.
Sure.
As long as no one separates themselves intentionally from the group.
Sure,
If there's
we're
going
in
to be
agreement.
any code, I would say the code which can't really be subverted is Black first,
Mm.
and then you move out from there. Like
Yeah.
that's our controlling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh man, you guys, I tell you, the two of you. Let me get into this paradigm 2. vertical integration. Now that we understand the concept of ethno-aggregation and the process of pooling group resources, let us move on to the second empowerment paradigm, vertical integration. Vertical integration is a directional paradigm that comes into play after Blacks as a group have ethno-aggregated around their most common and prominent characteristics. There is a commonly accepted rule in sociology that when ethnic groups are wedged into hierarchies of wealth, power, and privilege, competitive conflicts are inevitable. Vertical integration empowers Blacks to be territorial and vertically mobile. It places Black self interest first and propels Blacks in an upward economic direction because that is where the nation's wealth and power are localized. Wealth, income, businesses, privileges, and resource powers are fixed and parallel, with whiteness at the top of the resource ladder and blackness at the bottom. Wealth and power resources are continuously and disproportionately distributed to those at the top first. These resources circulate horizontally among members of the white in group before portions of the wealth and power trickle down to blacks and other outgroups at the lower levels. On the bottom level, Black Americans get what those above either did not want or didn't need. Either way, the result is the same. It's always too little, too late. However, we have a choice. We can continue to wait, hoping that those at the top will have a change of heart and share some of this nation's vast fortune. But that is against the grain of history and not likely to occur. Our best remaining option is to implement a national plan with strategies for moving up the nation's pecking order and compete for wealth and power resources at every level. There's more, but I'm going to jump to this Model T, the Power T mobility model. Um, and this kind of falls into kind of like what you were saying, Ben, about um, just take a look at this T. If we had somebody who gets to the top and decides, you know what, hey, I got mine, y'all get yours, that would present itself as a problem. And so that's why I agree with your last statement that if for this to work, we all have to be committed to one commonality, and that is Black first and Black winning. Um, I don't know. You guys jump in. How can someone who hasn't had the opportunity to interact with the two of you on a repeated basis, how can they come to fully understand the difference between this vertical model and this horizontal model, and why the vertical model is better than the horizontal model? And it doesn't matter to me which one of you wants to go first, but or you guys just jump in. But break this down for us, y'all. Help us understand. Make it come alive.
Okay. I can provide some analogies comparing the T model to what people experience and observe in our everyday lives. And it kind of shows the deficiencies in our community and the faults. Like if you take a look at the T mobility model on the right end of the screen, where Dr. Anderson proposes beginning with aggregating our resources and beginning with a foundation that helps propel us upward. And at every level, as we're propelling ourselves upward, we have institutions, we have businesses, we form industries, and the leaders of those industries have the overall well-being of our people in mind. And from the top, they continue and perpetually pull the base up, and the base thrives and expands. And the tree, or the Model T, expand as it gets to the top. It expands outward to where we can compete on industrial level against other ethnic groups. So what we see in real life is that those who at least are viewed to have wealth and power, they depend on the white economy to provide them with their wealth and power. They're not owners, they're more so employees. Mm-hmm. So we see them fighting, and it kind of goes into what Dr. Anderson describes as the horizontal model. But if we applied it to the vertical model, as it stands, those at the top economically in this country who are Black Americans, they're not concerned with creating that infrastructure to pull others up. So we recognize this, and we look at the Black population looks at that and says, why is that? Why are the people at the top or who have wealth not the least bit interested in pulling those at the bottom, or even those who are capable, who have skills and could actually fit into an economic model and actually thrive and be productive? Why aren't the people with the greater resources helping and reaching down to uplift those who have the ability to actually participate in the greater economy? Mm-hmm. So the issue is that as we exist, we aren't following that actual Model T structure. So those at the top don't have the ability or the intent to pull others from the bottom down. And also, we can also answer what the concerns of those at the top are. I've often heard the statements, if these people at the top stick their necks out for us, they realize that they'll have no support from the base. They don't have a base. So there's a disconnect at the top and bottom, where those at the top know they won't be supported by the base.
Right.
And those at the bottom see that those at the top aren't making efforts to pull us up. So that's the disconnect. And what Claud Anderson is proposing is that we start at the base to build a foundation and not relying on white resources or resources from other groups. We aggregate our own resources and build the structure to lift those to the top. And then they know they have the cultural, economic, and political protection from the base as they're building and expanding. And they know that it's in their best interest to pull those up from the base to keep that model and that ethno aggregation perpetuating itself. So
let me stop you. Let me stop you, Ben. I gotta say this. Replay gang, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. You know right now you're getting some real good information here. You know you are. So subscribe, hit the like button, share this show, leave a comment. You know I want to hear from you. Thank you for that, Ben. Here's this. Now this is my question, and you broke that down so well. And Yusuf, I'm certain that you're going to come and chime in. So I'm going to put this question out here, then we're going to hear from you, and you guys can both address it. How can the people at the bottom? Because when I look at this, I say, okay, how does this vertical model ensure that the people at the bottom, who, as you indicated, Ben, want to rise to the top because they've got the skill, they have the ability, the education, everything they need? How does this circular thing work? Is it velocity? What happens that the people at the bottom don't continue to remain at the bottom, constantly feeding the top? But how does this reciprocate to the people at the bottom that are continually supporting and chiming in? And so that's my question. But Yusuf, I want to hear from you overall.
Yes. Thank you. So, when I look at the T, first of all, even the social or the horizontal aggregation, I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was like, this reminds me of the crab in the bucket. So the whole concept of the crab in the bucket, and everybody's, I'm sure, familiar with it. Mm-hmm. When you're talking about the old horizontal, they're spreading out and they'll never be able to get up out of the bucket. They'll get to the edges of the bucket and try to get on top of each other. And the new vertical model, when it's actually the best way for all the crabs to get out if they actually stack each other, in a one unified line. And then once they get above the edge or the top of the bucket, that's when they actually spread out, and then they'll be able to pull each other out of the bucket. When we're talking about, I mentioned capitalism earlier. One of the potential drawbacks people often talk about is how they take advantage, or the private companies or employers are taking advantage of workers. And I think I think we're also, when I get back to ethnicity, we're in the unique space, not only from our just kind of our culture. Historically, we've developed relationships that are from our extended family, and things like that. So I think when I look at it, and a potential opportunity would be focusing on when we develop companies, develop them as co-ops. So co-ops actually support the workers, and it's not a top-down approach. Everybody who actually participates benefits. So you have like Navy Federal, they and a number of these different type of co-ops. That's a great opportunity for to kind of spread the wealth, because again, when we're going back to black labor, white wealth, we also don't want it to be a class issue. So I think when people are able to control their labor, and actually are directing it to the right way. And when we also are aggregated together, the wealth is going to be continuously cycling, and that's one of the things that it's important that we focus on those sequences, as far as ethno aggregation first, and then we focus on vertical integration. It's very hard to have vertical integration when you are spread out, based off of the various different industries that we not only we spend a lot of money with right now. We can kind of build the whole from sourcing the products, actually doing the manufacturing. All of these are not only job opportunities, the ability for people to gain money. And when I'm thinking about the larger industries, when we're talking about the NFL, NBA, these are all the workers are providing their labors for other people to gain wealth. And and it could really, when we're talking about just from a sports, I'm just because a lot of people are more familiar with it. That's starting back, right now they have the AAU tournament. Like, that's all. When we're talking about vertical integration, that's starting out as all the basketball trainers will be black, all from high school. All the high school coaches would be black, and then the whole, when people are matriculating up the system, everybody that they come in contact would be not only be benefiting off of the uplifting of themselves, but also the community. So when you have coaches, a lot of coaches don't get the opportunity to excel and move forward. This type of system, or vertical integration, this allows like upward mobility, because a lot of times the reason why black people don't have the ability to move up as we would like is because we're working, and we're being that's the whole point of white supremacy. It's a suppression. And my thinking is when we actually are on a vertical integration focus, meritocracy, the ability to your performance will be the main indicator of how you're ceiling. And right now that's not the case. So again, it's important to make sure when we're thinking about this, there's a sequence that we have to follow. And the first is that we have to do the as far as between the two of them, it's ethno aggregation, and then the vertical integration, so we can really benefit.
Yes, Youssef, thank you for touching on that, because I did intend to go back and address that. I don't want to express the T model as the elites pulling up those at the bottom, because that wouldn't be necessary. Under that model, the environment would be set to a fairness, so that those moving up there would finally be an environment where they can express their skills and utilize their productivity in a way where they're not being targeted or deprived or pushed back, you know. So it would be the natural progression of our people who are very skillful to move up to those upper levels of the T model and thrive. And there
Exactly.
will be
Yeah.
no need to be pulled up because it would be the natural,
Exactly.
flow of things.
Exactly. Yeah, the base would be very fertile. The foundation would be very fertile. So as you everybody would to grow. And even in his book, once you get to the top, you can spread out your opportunities and things like that. And it is important to not only have there's nothing wrong with having other communities work for you, but
Mhm.
you're building the wealth when you do have that opportunity, when you are at a larger aspect.
Yes.
But it's more important, at least initially, that we need to insulate our power. And like the book says, aggregate and be, whether that be one place,
Sure.
be one industry. Understand what industries that we spend the most money on. Figure out how we can manage that production as well as the sales. So all of the money will then, be, support our community.
Yes.
Yes, we
Now,
can't vision the end goal of the T model. We can't
mhm,
forget is to get to the point where we can compete against other
yes.
ethnicities and other
Right.
groups.
Right. Let me, and you guys, listen, you guys are so awesome. Let me read now let me insert Dr. Claude Anderson's voice in this, because you guys have really just made this come alive. And so now I think is appropriate to hear what Dr. Claude has written about it. He says that vertical integration, working hand in hand with ethno-aggregation, is symbolized by the power T illustration in Figure 6. A group aggregates and concentrates its power, or as you were, concentrates its resources at the base of the stem of the T for maximum strength. Once blacks have concentrated their resources, they should move them up the stem towards a crossbar at its top. As blacks ascend, they stem. As blacks ascend the stem, they compete at each class level with each and every ethnic, religious, language, and gender group. Regardless of how high blacks ascend, if their resources are pooled and connected, they continue to receive cultural and racial support from their base, their roots. They hold all newly captured turf so that other blacks from below can have a clear channel through which they too can ascend. Those blacks who reach the top of the T can then capture new territory by moving horizontally into non black communities and pursuing political and business opportunities. As more blacks reach the top, they too can expand horizontally to capture new political and economic resources. The earlier example of Arab Americans in Detroit exemplifies Power T activity. And the what Dr. Claude Anderson had stated about the Arabs in Detroit. This was like we covered this, and I think in the previous show or two. That floored me because it was a small amount who came through like in the night and gained control of a suburb in Detroit. Not Detroit per se, but I can't remember the actual name of the city. To the point where now they're putting, according to Dr. Claude Anderson, I'm paraphrasing bigly, they're putting the white people to in the community like, oh my God, we gotta power up because if not, these Arabs are going to take political control of us. Um,
Yeah, not only the white people, I believe it was
mhm.
Dearborn, but
Yeah,
not
dear
only the
Lord.
white people, it was that, I mean, the Detroit metropolitan was, black, dominant. So they came in and, provided businesses and such. So we, started supporting that community. And, too often the other cultures are built on the back of, black people based off of our economics.
Right.
We're, providing income, but it's important again, going back to Dr. Anderson's first book, black labor, white wealth. If you don't control your labor, you're going to end up making someone else wealthy, and you're just going to get a paycheck. There's nothing wrong with the paycheck, but we have to position ourselves where we can retain our wealth, and and
Yes.
again, that's very critical on
Yes.
who we're working for.
Absolutely. Because that trickle down doesn't, we don't get it. It never trickles down to us. And what does
Yeah.
end up trickling down is not something we want, or as Dr. Claude said in here, it's too little too late.
True.
Well, the next figure that you're about to go on, the only thing that is will be beneficial when we're talking about trickle down is
Mhm.
if we're focusing on black first. Everything
Mhm.
else, when we're talking about the everything, all the horizontal issues, whether that be sex, gender, politics, religion, any other attribute or identity that you can tag along, that's how we're when we say the saying all high tides lift every boat. That's
Mm.
the only way that it's going to benefit us.
Mm.
Any other thing is not going to support us. And oftentimes, when the tide lifts, people build dams so they keep the water on their side, and and our boat stays down. So it's
Yes.
really important that we, all of this concept of what is it called, the intersectionality and things like
Mhm.
that does not work for us. It's
Right.
not a these systems were created to make us race is just a social construct to
Mhm.
make us a minority. We mentioned earlier in the conversation, black people ethnically. Honestly, this is just by the time when the book was written, I think we probably had the largest ethnicity. So
Mm.
we really need to leverage that and our buying power and everything,
Mm.
and really focus on the black forward first, and our boat will rise, and every other, whether that individual identification, you
Mm.
will rise. We're a community. Our culture is a community, and other cultures idolize individualism. So we really need to make sure that when we are oftentimes we compare ourselves to other cultures, but we are running we have a different strategy, and if we use the same strategies as everybody else, we'll be in last place perpetually, because
Mm.
you have to do something different. If everybody's doing the same thing, you're going to be running at the same pace. And this is and I believe Dr. Anderson says this is a race with no finish line.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if and the only thing that if we don't change anything, we're just going to continue to get slower and slower as other people
Jump on the
fortify.
track and get in front of us and beat us to the end game. Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I would like to add, just as Youssef says that we should be conscious of not providing our labor to
Mm.
make others wealthy to our detriment, we should also apply that exact idea to our tax revenue. We should be conscious about applying our tax revenue and living in areas
Mm.
or communities where we don't control those communities.
Ooh.
Our tax revenue goes to the people who can allocate those funds for any and everything but our interest,
Yes. Oh.
and it doesn't come back to us. So that would be another benefit of ethno aggregation, where even our tax base, we
Mm.
provide a tax base for those districts or
Mm.
those counties, or hopefully the state
Yes.
that we would one day hope to control.
Sure enough.
And that state would, all that tax revenue from us being the tax base would come back to benefit us.
Hmm.
That's a great point,
Yes.
because taxes, that's one of our largest expenses. Everybody's
Mm.
largest.
Sure.
And to your point, when we're talking about labor, you don't necessarily. I think you can work for the government because, in essence, you are working. You're providing your labor to yourself, because tax revenue is actually paying you. And if you're not, working for the government, you should be. Hopefully, you're working for a co-op where, you're
You
getting
want to go on
equal
camera?
pay and representative and uplift from everybody.
You want to go
So
on camera?
yeah, I think labor is important. How you're spending your money, supporting black businesses and so on and so forth. These are all things that we need to focus on.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Let me get into the piece that's going to lead us over here. I was going to skip it a little bit, but you guys touched on it so well that I've got to read it. Social integration and horizontal negatives. Black Americans as a group cannot improve their wealth and power by advancing horizontal social integration. Wealth and power and other resources are not stored horizontally in a pecking order, nor are they stored on the same level with Black Americans. Black Americans are locked into a caste system upon which this nation's class system rests. Horizontal movement places blacks in economic competition with poor whites who have yet to ascend the pecking order. Social integration in the old horizontal model in Figure 6, let me pull that up so we're all following along. Um, in the old horizontal model in Figure 6 has misled blacks into believing that wealth and power resources are stored just over the next horizon or in the next suburb, all within marching distance. Also, horizontal movement locks blacks into competition with immigrants and other evolving minorities. Multiculturalism, cultural diversity, and a colorblind society give the illusion of progress. Blacks were convinced into believing that aligning with ethnic immigrants who have been in this country less than 30 years is somehow progress for Black people. Aligning with these immigrant groups and their horizontal issues detoured Blacks. Moreover, it blurred the obligations that this nation's advantaged society had to its disadvantage. Wait a minute, let me read this. Hold on. Moreover, it blurred the obligations that this nation's advantaged society has to its disadvantaged Black citizens. Even now, every Black initiative is burdened with a universalism that requires them to share the fruits of their victory with other horizontal groups competing against Black America. Black Americans must not allow the vertical line of obligation between themselves and whites to be blurred. Blacks are injured by those who do not make distinctions between them and other minority groups. Equating other minority groups with blacks demonstrates a poor understanding of history and hides the fact that Black people remain at the bottom of the pile. Horizontal movement to align blacks with other minority or special interest groups erases Black America's special moral claim on our society and history. Although our labor built this country, we have not been properly recognized or compensated. Worse, we have been treated as just another aggrieved minority group. We are reduced to just another political group with outstretched palms, a special interest vying for the same affirmative action programs as Eskimos and Salvadorians. We recapture our special moral claim and status by aspiring upward. I'm going to skip around in here a little bit um, and say that horizontal movement does not redistribute the ownership and control of wealth and power resources. Instead, it simply wastes time and resources. As an example, how did moving from the back to the front of the bus, from the ghetto to the suburbs, from a Black restaurant to a white restaurant, or from a Black school to a white school improve Black people's ownership and control of wealth and power? It didn't. Racism, all the drama, all the problems, all of the trickle down, make sure, the too little too late still exists. Matter of fact, it's become even more sophisticated, if you will, um, more heinous, if you will. And I love the example that you came up with, Ben, about that tax base, because I got to thinking, how many of our Black students are prison to pipeline? Or the school to prison pipeline, and it's not just students in the hood. If we're in any piece of a school district where our taxes keep that school open, but our us we're getting expelled and suspended. So now you enjoy the benefit of our tax revenue keeping that school thriving, but yet our students don't get any bit of what we are required as the taxpayer in that area to pay in order to keep that school together. So I'm going to open the floor up if you guys want to
Yeah,
jump. Yes, please, Yusuf.
that's exactly right. Historically, we've been voting for the Democratic Party for as long as I've been alive.
Hmm.
And if we're going to do that, I don't have a problem with whichever way we want to vote. But if we're going to, put our ticket on the Democrats, to me, that means that you're voting for a bigger government. So that means that I believe that we need to be in having tackle or try to go after all of the government jobs, being teachers, being the county executives, being commissioners' offices. If we're saying that this is what we want, we need to really be going after these jobs. There's high-paying jobs throughout there. So I just think going back towards the end of this chapter, not only do we have to have an empowerment culture, but the key thing is having a group vision.
Mm,
So if we do vote a certain way, we need to get every single benefit that we can get out of what we're voting
yeah.
for. And that's the main thing. We need to be motivated. When we're motivated to do something, we need to get every single crumb because Dr. Anderson talks about taking risk, and
Hmm.
not just taking risks just to take risks, but when you do, you have to take it calculated because we're behind.
Hmm.
In his document, he was talking about 2005, I believe,
Yeah,
is when the cutoff was.
yeah,
We're in 2023, almost
yeah,
2024. We're
yeah.
behind,
Way
and
behind.
a lot of what he's saying, honestly, it's prophesied to a certain extent. So we need to be able to take educated risk, and sometimes we need to do risks that are filled with passion because that might drive you a bit further. But all I know is that we need to be moving.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do because there is more to this chapter, but I got you guys here for a specific reason. So, this vertical cross purpose categories, um, I'm going to. Um, I'm going to read this section on page 56 and let you guys help make that figure come to life, and then and I think that's going to cover it, and then leave it to the viewers and listeners to finish the rest of the chapter because the chapter is going to go on to applications of vertical integration. Do competitors profit from our horizontal orientation? And I'm just going to say probably, absolutely. Should blacks ever move horizontally? And then the conclusion. But right now, because this is what's so key, Dr. Claude Anderson put these figures in the book, and I want to make sure that we understand what these figures are representing. Um, so he says here on page 56 the advantages of vertical integration in association with the empowerment vision of economic and political reform for Black America. The vertical integration paradigm has numerous practical and important purposes. 9 purposes are listed here. Vertical integration gives Black Americans access to the primary holders of the nation's um, wealth and resource powers. 2, it gives Black America a collective sense of direction for their collective self interest. It gives Blacks a channel for upward mobility. It is a tool to capture new physical and financial cultural territory. It gives Black Americans the mechanism to control economic industry from raw material at the bottom to the retail markets at the top. 7, it instills Black Americans with the mindset that encourages them to concentrate and direct resources for maximum impact and benefit and visibility. It promotes a hierarchy of authority and respect within Black families, Black neighborhoods, and Black people. And finally, it reduces Black Americans' vulnerability to competitive groups by dissuading them from engaging in self defeating um, horizontal integration, lateral mobility, cross purpose issues. Vertical integration advantages Black Americans by vertically linking its authority to institutional leaders with the Black masses. This
Profound.
very much so. And if we can't follow this, then what's our problem? But let's get into this cross purposes, um, because he's saying here that horizontal integration is at cross purposes with the self interest of blacks. Um, it says here racism runs up and down from the highest point to the lowest point. It affects every member of the black race. Regardless of education, employment class, or party affiliation, the only blacks who benefit from engaging in cross purpose activities are those directly behind the point where the horizontal issue, and pull that up, where the horizontal issue intersects. For example, when black women devote their resources to the horizontal gender issue, any benefits from their efforts will not accrue to the race, but to all women. But within the gender category, benefits gained will trickle down to black women who will still be at the bottom of the gender issue. Therefore, the horizontal issues such as gender, political affiliations, and class should be secondary to racism and the structural economic inequalities that it protects. Horizontal issues that affect everybody have the potential to overshadow racism, divert resources, and prolong this nation's racial inequalities. The so called aggrieved minorities and women upon whom horizontal issues focus together form a majority of the white population. When Black Americans participate with these groups, not only are they working at cross purposes with their own best interests, their participation pits them against other Blacks. You guys, I need you to make those words, make this graph make sense. Because I was like, wait a minute, what? Wait, I don't understand the graph. So somebody school me right now. Coleman, you're smiling. So
Yeah, so
come on.
honestly, as you're saying it again, I was looking at not only that graph, but more so the new vertical model. I
Mm-hmm.
actually look at the vertical stem as when is black is the foundation,
Mm-hmm.
and once everybody is involved in that, and you automatically you can, if you would like to move horizontal after we've all been aligned together, by
Sure.
all means do. The more folks that we have that are focused specifically on the hierarchy of our black race
Mm-hmm.
in our culture, the higher the stem is. So that's how I look at it. I wouldn't be surprised if he was combining those two together as far as the black stem. Because he does reference horizontal earlier in the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at it from a social integration, it just compares black versus white, but you can put Asian and that on the left and the right of the last the figure that we were just looking at, figure 7. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because you can put white, you can put Asian, Hispanic, and that is just the same model of the social integration from his first figure 6. It
Mm-hmm.
can go left and right. So when I look at the figure 7, I look at the black in the alignment of vertical. That's vertical integration, and that creates the stem in which wealth and resources and power can expand out if we so choose. So yeah, it's all about voluntary segregation, and do it when it's advantageous for us. Right now, we are socially integrating when it's not advantageous for us.
Mm. Yeah.
So we have to not only prioritize. One of the best things, or the things that I really left with this chapter, is
Mm-hmm.
not only prioritization of what we need to do, but then
Sure.
also sequences. This is a sequence of steps that all need to occur for
Mhm.
us to all live better.
Sure. Absolutely. Improve. Ben,
So, right, right.
was there something that you were going to add?
I don't believe I have anything further to
Mm.
add. I think Youssef covered it all. I could
Yeah.
say the model on 56, it
Mm-hmm.
just reinforces the previous model on
Mm-hmm.
page 53.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say previous model, I'm referring to the horizontal model
Sure.
on 53. And then on 56, Dr. Anderson characterizes religion, poverty, gender, ethnicity, political party, and use the model located on 56 to provide
Mm-hmm.
an example on how us horizontally integrating in no way benefits us. The highest benefit goes to the people who are the managers of this society, and the people that control the resources within this society, by throwing our resources, our energies, our productivity into their system. By trying to integrate, it only benefits their industries, their institutions,
Mhm.
and everything else they control.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, when Ben's talking, it reminds me of I always see those
Go
like
ahead. Go ahead.
therapists do those memes where you're pouring a glass of water into a bunch of different cups, and then you use focus and pour the glass in one cup and allow it to overflow. Only do that when focus on yourself, focus on your community, focus on your culture, focus on being black, and if water overflows and it helps other people, great, but you need to focus on yourself first. And
Right.
I think everybody's going to benefit. Everybody will benefit as far as the black community. We definitely need to do this because uh, a lot of the institutions and things like that, they're creating a narrative that doesn't necessarily serve us. When we were talking about the different the buying powers and our wealth, collectively we're one of the strongest and most vibrant communities. So I just think that when we focus on ourselves, start be able to build solutions for ourselves, start building institutions for ourselves, start creating models that serve us better.
Right.
And it's important. We have to create black propaganda to
Yeah.
actually highlight the areas that we excel at. And that's all propaganda is. People talk about other people,
Mhm.
in like war times, but you also can have propaganda that shines the best in you. So
Absolutely.
oftentimes, the only thing when we allow other people to provide a narrative, it's they're highlighting areas that don't glorify
Sure.
the excellence that we do have in our community.
That's right.
So that's a very critical part about making sure that we focus on being
Right.
black first.
And
Yeah.
and and to be honest, and no other ethnicity allows us to write their narrative. They don't
Mm.
allow us
True.
to be their propaganda agents. So why are we sitting back quietly while others write ours? So yeah. What were you going to say, Ben?
I was going to say, on page 56, where
Mhm.
Dr. Anderson provides the advantages, or he states that what the advantages of vertical integration are.
Mhm.
There's a few points where he points out that it's a matter of psychology.
Mm.
We need to have inspiration or self-confidence in order to make this work. And every step and action that we take towards vertical integration or towards working together, it provides that further confidence that
Yes.
we're able to do it. We're able to succeed.
Yes.
And that's what we
Indeed.
need.
Indeed,
It's
yes,
building
it
blocks.
builds. That's right. It is building blocks. And it also allows us to address the issues that plague us as a community and prevents us from being able to work together. So as we uh, work together and accomplish small victories, repeatedly, that grows into a larger sense of confidence in each other and in ourselves and in our overall objective. And that's the other reason why it's so important for us to work together and for us to have conversations where I can say, hey, and you said it first in here, Ben, there's trust issues. And so having these honest conversations while we're building allows us to identify what the issues are and resolve them and
Yeah.
resolve them. And that's
Yeah.
what's key.
Yeah, honestly, Ben, the highlight of the chapter for me, Ben just touched on it. It was to get black people. When we do this, you get black people not only motivated, but you are gaining confidence and resources. And once you are able to get people motivated, black people always cheer for, the first black person doing this, the first
Yeah.
person's doing, these different things. These are a source of motivation. And, in different communities, this is a often, like people are used to it. So, being aggregated together and being able to see, black success, it'll motivate you, and it'll develop that confidence is
Yes.
what you need. And so, yeah, I like literally the greatest part about that was really reading that line, as far as like, this is the solution. We need to make sure that we're creating more confident individuals, and they
Right.
also have access to resources so they can go out and act on that confidence.
Right. Oh my God. Listen, y'all. I don't know, Ben, if there's anything else you want to add, but you guys have made this the tail end of chapter 2 come alive. You've done it for me, and I got a feeling that anybody else that watches this episode is it's going to come alive for them as well. I just need to thank the both of you, BNB and Yusuf Colburn.
Coburn. Coburn.
Hmm. I thank both of you for taking my call and agreeing to come and have this conversation with me. I greatly appreciate it. Is there any other last words you guys want to impart?
I mean, the only last thing, I'm not selling anything, but buy this book, buy all of Dr. Claud Anderson's book. Like, they are a guide. This is the
Mm,
national plan for empowerment for Black people. You have to understand, the context in which he's talking about. Keep in mind, when you're reading, a lot of these literatures, think about in the time in which this person was writing it, and then while there are some changes, but he's coming at it from a psychology
mhm.
perspective. So human behavior doesn't change too much; it's the same patterns. So this is an essential read, and also it's probably a reread too, essential reread. I enjoyed myself rereading it, and I'm sure I'll use it as a reference book moving forward.
Mm, thank you.
Okay. I would just like to add one thing. I would like to lay out how this would look in real terms, like projected into the future. Ethno aggregation in real terms would look like a number of us moving into towns and cities, um, organizing amongst ourselves, starting businesses, um, interacting or networking with each other, setting our sights on controlling the politics within our towns and cities, taking over those local, county, and eventually state seats. You know, using our newfound authority to change on the city level ordinances, on the county level and state level statutes to benefit us, thoroughly benefit us. Changing county, I would say, I lost that train of thought.
It's okay.
But I would just like, if for those of us who, or people who are listening to this, or who come in later to listen to a recording, I just want them to understand that we are capable of running our own politics, our own cities, our own towns. Uh, Whatever position is required to run infrastructure. We pass roads and bridges. We pass factories. We see companies operating throughout this country. There are those of us that have jobs and positions that make us capable of running everything and maintaining everything we see out there in the world every day. We have the capability, we have the know-how, the intellectual know-how and skills to do everything required for vertical integration, where if we got together, we can provide skills, services, we can maintain our communities ourselves. And it won't require the help of any outside group. We just have to believe. So it's a matter of psychology and having the motivation to get out there and do it, believing in ourselves, building that internal fire to want to do it. And it takes interacting with our people and building trust, because right now, I don't want to say what the percentage is, but there's a percentage of us that believe that it's white society, white people that's holding the fabric of society together. They don't believe that we could thrive without independently of white oversight. So we have to almost I almost use the word excoriate, but we have to drop that feeling or that sense of
mindset,
believing in ourselves, because we do have the ability to sustain ourselves if we work together. But we need leadership to step forward and hammer that into the overall national consciousness. When I say national, I mean within the Black community, that this is our goal, this is what we need to do, and this is how we would benefit from doing this. And I guess it takes people that have a hold of like our community's consciousness, because it takes marketing, it takes outreach, but we have to have people, because to this point we don't have people that are willing to step forward and propose ethno aggregation as a solution. And as I stated earlier in this discussion, the Black majority state is the highest expression of ethno aggregation. That's where we put ourselves in control, and we use those positions to create laws and policies that benefit ourselves. And we can do it. We have to believe we can do it. And it's just not faith. We have, throughout this country, we have Black Americans that are doing jobs, that are in positions that make us capable of running our own systems.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with the word you said. And not only are they doing jobs, but they're inventing things and they're getting things patented. And they're, we are about that life as Black Americans. And so, yes, we certainly can do it. And I feel as though it's probably a lot easier than we think, only because there's so many of us that realize what the issue is. What we haven't been able to do is make that connection and find that ethno aggregation game plan. Okay, so it's like for me, when I read about ethno aggregation after reading this Powernomics book, and then the examples that Dr. Claud Anderson gave about, the Arabs and Dearborn and the Chinese and the this and the that, the Asians and that. It's like, man. And even Dr. Claud Anderson said, everybody's doing it but us. And that's exactly what's happening. Can we imagine what our world would look like right now if Black Americans had been ethno aggregating? Well, we'd be,
we have in history, we did.
We have, absolutely.
We didn't voluntarily, segregate. So
yes,
it's people always bring back, before the 50s and like read and watch and read up on that time. That's,
yes.
we were, separate and we weren't equal, but look at all the amazing things that we accomplished.
Absolutely.
We, speaking to Ben's point, we have shown that we're able to and capable to build, and so much so that they call them Black Wall Street. They don't call these other, places like that. And that to me just speaks to how, how easy we excel when we work together.
Right.
Because again, our culture has, is a community based, and I think in a capitalist society, we have the advantage because a lot of the other cultures are individuals. And I think the thing that we're missing is we're communal, but we also need to be communal and be productive together. And I think that's the critical thing. So when we do have our, family reunions, our, church meetings, or anytime that we come together in the different areas that we do, we also need to, first, whatever we're coming together, do that, but also make sure that we're moving the needle forward as a community in the right direction.
Yes. Um, Ben, unless you've got some closing words, I'm about to wrap this show. You guys have
Trying to
done it
say,
for me this morning.
I
This
believe
was
the
great.
first
I'm
step.
happy. Happy we made
Oh
time
my
for this.
God, me too.
Thank you.
It definitely has inspired me to continue on,
Yes,
contribute in the way that I can.
absolutely, absolutely.
So I would
And
just say
you,
my final statement. It's a quick or brief statement. The first step is being willing to hold our hand out and work with each other.
Mhm.
I'm willing. We have to create an example for others to see, and I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to step forward, hold my hand out, network with a like-minded group, and begin to create that example where we can then advertise to others, hey, look what we're doing.
Mhm.
This is possible. Let's vet you. If you want to join the group, you can join the fold and help us build, and we build out from there. It
Exactly.
might seem
That's
like
how
a
I
drop in the
met
bucket.
Ben. I
Excuse me.
said exactly. That's how we met. We
Yeah.
agree with this ethno aggregation, and like minds are going to converge, and we're going to start building that T stem for the vertical integration. So we need we would love to have more people. We need more people to not only read the book and then put it into action, because
And
it is a game plan. It's a strategy, and just figure out where you can best fit.
Yusuf, your proposal that stood out at that meeting was establishing a form of branding. And there would be no better branding than standing behind Claude Anderson's example in pushing for, if you want to term it rebranding of the Black majority state, but maybe it's they can stand side by side, but terming it ethno aggregation will help, and also attributing it to Dr. Anderson helps people get the idea a little better and quicker. They're less likely to challenge it.
Yeah, read the book, buy the book, and then read the book. We have to support our scholars.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you so very, very much. I expect to see you again soon.
Thank you for
Um,
having me, Mel.
oh my God.
Yeah, thank
Listen.
you. It was a pleasure.
Oh,
I like
mine.
your production as well. The
Thank you.
video at the beginning.
Appreciate
Definitely a
it.
professional.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. That's it. That's the podcast. Be sure to like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Replay Gang, you know what to do. Leave a comment. You know I want to hear from you. And until next time, y'all, we will see you when we see you.
Everyone take care.
Welcome to the Only Male Cruz Show, the We Own Your Head podcast. Discussing topics that make you say, how and where can we improve as a society? From a Black American's perspective. Copyright disclaimer regarding fair use is in full effect. The views and opinions expressed in this show, you guessed it, they're all mine. Catch us live, be ready to speak. This is a call-in show. Be sure to hit the like button, share, subscribe, Replay Gang, leave a comment. You know I want to hear from you. Let's go to work.